a man enters a crowded bar in Columbus, Ohio. Hundreds of people see him. Security cameras capture him walking inside. But when the night ends, he is gone. No footage ever shows him leaving. Nearly 20 years later, nobody knows what happened to Brian Shaffer. Brian Shaffer grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, the older of two sons in a family that valued hard work and education. He stood out in high school as captain of the tennis team, tall and athletic, known for his quick wit and easy sense of humor. After graduation, Brian stayed close to home, enrolling at Ohio State University. He earned his bachelor's degree in microbiology before moving on to the College of Medicine, where he was deep into his second year by 2006. Most days started early and ended late. Brian's world revolved around lectures, labs, and clinical rotations at the university hospital. Friends described him as reliable, the kind of person who never missed a study group or left a text unanswered. Outside the classroom, he carved out time for video games, late-night conversations, and the occasional night out with classmates. He had a knack for making people feel at ease, and his circle of friends was wide, drawn to his mix of intelligence and approachability. Family remained a constant presence, even as the demands of medical school grew. Randy and Renee Shaffer supported his ambitions, proud of the path he was forging. In the routine of Brian's life, nothing pointed toward chaos or escape. He was a young man with a future mapped out, moving steadily forward through the ordinary pressures and small joys of his 20s. Brian's life in early 2006 was shaped by a quiet but powerful sense of commitment. At the center was Alexis Wagoner, a fellow medical student who had become more than just a girlfriend. Their relationship had grown serious, with plans for a spring break trip to Miami already set and talk among friends that Brian was preparing to propose. For Alexis, the future felt close enough to touch: a shared apartment, the next phase of medical school, maybe even a ring. She described Brian as attentive, loving, and full of small gestures that signaled a man thinking years ahead rather than days. Yet beneath this forward momentum, loss had recently carved out a space in Brian's world. His mother, Renee, died from cancer just 3 weeks before his disappearance. Friends noticed a change. He was quieter, sometimes distant, but never withdrawn from those he loved. He kept moving, showing up for Alexis, for his brother Derek, for his father Randy, all while carrying a grief that rarely surfaced in public. Alexis later recalled how he tried to shield her from the worst of it, insisting he was managing, determined not to let sorrow derail the life they were building together. To those around him, Brian's routines and relationships offered reassurance. His days were packed, his future mapped out. Nothing in his actions hinted at a man on the verge of vanishing. The shock of his disappearance would hit hardest for those who saw, up close, just how much he had to lose. March 31st, 2006 began as a night like any other for Brian Shaffer and his friends. Spring break had finally arrived, and the streets around Ohio State University were alive with students eager to unwind. Brian met up with Clint Florence, a close friend from medical school, and the two set out for the Arena District, a stretch of bars and clubs that drew crowds every weekend. They moved from place to place, blending in with the tide of young people chasing the same release after a week of exams and hospital shifts. Clint would later recall nothing out of the ordinary. No arguments, no strange encounters, no reason to remember the first hours as anything but routine. At some point in the night, Meredith Reed, another friend, joined the group. She offered them a ride back toward campus, dropping them at the Ugly Tuna Saloona just before midnight. The bar, perched on the second floor of the Gateway complex, was a familiar haunt for students. Inside, Brian and his friends ordered drinks, laughed, and mingled with other patrons. Witnesses described the mood as light, the energy typical for a Friday. Brian texted his girlfriend, Alexis, to say he loved her. There was no hint of trouble, no sign that the night would take a turn. Every movement, every conversation fit the pattern of an ordinary night out, until it didn't. Inside the Ugly Tuna Saloona, the night stretched toward last call. Music thumped, glasses clinked, and crowds pressed close in the narrow space between the bar and the exit. Brian Shaffer was last seen alive here, in the thick of it. Just before 2 a.m., surveillance footage captured him standing near the entrance, talking with two women, Amber Ruick and Brighton Zatko. He laughed, gestured, and then turned away from the camera's view. For a few seconds, he lingered in the entryway, framed by the glow of neon and the movement of strangers heading for the door. Clint Florence and Meredith Reed, his companions that night, waited for him outside as the bar emptied. They watched as patrons filed out, but Brian never appeared. No one remembers seeing him leave. The cameras, positioned to cover the main entrance and the interior hallway, recorded every other person exiting, yet there is no footage, no partial glimpse, no shadow of Brian stepping through any door. The service exit, meant for staff, remained locked according to employee statements. The only public way out was the front entrance, under constant surveillance. In a matter of minutes, the ordinary chaos of closing time swept the floor clean. Brian's friends circled back inside, calling his name, searching corners and restrooms. The crowd thinned, the lights came up, and the bar prepared to shut down. Somewhere in that narrow window, Brian Shaffer vanished. His last confirmed moment exists as a fragment, caught on tape, but swallowed by a gap that no one can explain. The story narrows to a single unresolved interval, where a man surrounded by people simply disappears. Surveillance footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloona became the backbone of the investigation. The cameras, fixed and unblinking, captured Brian Shaffer entering the bar at 1:15 a.m. alongside Clint Florence and Meredith Reed. Their arrival is clear. Faces, clothing, every detail preserved in the grainy analog record. Later, at 1:55 a.m., the footage isolates Brian near the entrance, speaking with two women. He laughs, gestures, and then moves out of frame. That is the last time he is seen on camera. What follows is a sequence that should have been routine. The crowd thins as last call approaches. People cluster at the doors, filtering out one by one. The cameras document this steady procession. Every patron, every staff member, each person accounted for as they exit into the night. The footage is methodical, almost clinical in its coverage. Yet among the dozens who leave, Brian is never seen again. Not a glimpse, not a partial image. He does not appear in the background of any shot. His absence is not just a missing frame. It is a void in a system designed to capture every movement. Investigators pored over the tapes, replaying the sequence, searching for any sign of error or tampering. The system recorded all other exits, with no technical malfunctions reported that night. The cameras did their job, except for Brian. In a place built on visibility, his disappearance is recorded not by what the footage shows, but by what it fails to explain. The evidence is as stark as it is incomplete. Brian Shaffer entered the Ugly Tuna Saloona, and the cameras never caught him leaving. The architecture of the Ugly Tuna Saloona and its surroundings did more than set the scene. It shaped the mystery itself. The main entrance, perched at the top of a long escalator, was under near constant watch by analog cameras. Every drinker, every staff member, every late-night straggler appeared on tape as they entered or left through this front access. Yet certainty ended at the edge of each camera's frame. The building held blind spots, places where the technology of 2006 simply could not reach. Behind the bar, a secondary route complicated the story. This service door, intended for employees, opened onto a narrow corridor and a stairwell that led into an active construction zone. The camera near this exit captured only a sliver of the hallway, leaving a short stretch unmonitored. Temporary walls and scaffolding from ongoing renovations created pockets of shadow and confusion. Anyone slipping through the service door could, in theory, vanish into the unfinished maze beyond, unseen by both patrons and surveillance. Police confirmed the main cameras were working and that no technical failure explained Brian's absence from the recordings. But the angles they provided were never enough. The field of view missed critical corners, and the construction area itself was a tangle of barriers and half-built structures. These gaps did not confirm any single theory. They only ensured that no definitive answer was possible. The building became a labyrinth, not just of concrete and drywall, but of uncertainty. In the end, the limits of the venue's design and its camera coverage left investigators, and everyone who has studied the case since, staring into a void that technology could not fill. The Columbus Division of Police responded quickly once Brian Shaffer was reported missing. Officers locked down the Ugly Tuna Saloona, searching every corner of the bar and the surrounding gateway complex. Cadaver dogs were led through the stairwells, service corridors, and the construction zone that bordered the venue. Their handlers reported nothing, no scent, no sign of a body, not even a trace. Search teams swept the nearby alleys and rooftops, then moved out to the Olentangy and Scioto rivers, dragging the water and scanning the banks for hours. Divers found only debris. Every space that might conceal a person was examined, from elevator shafts to drainage grates, but the result was always the same: empty. With no physical evidence to guide them, investigators turned to the people who had shared those final hours with Brian. More than 30 interviews were logged, including friends, staff, and construction workers who had access to the building that night. Statements varied, sometimes contradicting one another. and no one could say for certain where Brian went once he slipped from the camera's view. The absence of hard evidence elevated the importance of memory and testimony. But with each retelling, the picture only grew murkier. The search left no physical mark, but the questions it raised would linger far longer than the scent of spilled beer or the echo of closing time. Brian Shaffer's cell phone became a focal point for investigators, desperate for a lead after the trail inside the bar ran cold. In the days following his disappearance, police obtained records from his carrier, hoping that digital traces might succeed where cameras and witness accounts had failed. The phone's last known activity was logged just after closing time. No calls, no texts, no data. Then, days later, a faint signal registered on a cell tower in Hilliard, a suburb northwest of Columbus, nearly 15 miles from the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The device had pinged the network, but the margin of error in location data was wide, and the signal itself offered no proof that Brian had been the one holding the phone. Investigators could not determine if the device was moved by a stranger, turned on by accident, or simply caught in a network glitch. No further pings were ever traced, and the phone's memory yielded nothing more. For all the hope that technology might fill the gaps left by failing memory and incomplete surveillance, the evidence stopped short. The signal in Hilliard became just another unanswered question, one more piece that refused to fit. The case remained open, not for lack of effort, but because the digital trail, like every other lead, ended in silence. Every theory in the Brian Shaffer case is shaped by the same hard boundary. He was seen entering the Ugly Tuna Saloona, and not a single camera ever caught him leaving. The accidental concealment scenario takes root in the building's flaws. Behind the bar, the service door led into a construction zone, a space riddled with blind spots and unfinished corners. If Brian slipped through intentionally or not, he could have fallen or become trapped, hidden from sight. Yet, after exhaustive sweeps with cadaver dogs and repeated inspections of every shaft, crawl space, and drain, no trace of him was found. The physical possibility is there, but the absence of evidence gnaws at the idea. Voluntary disappearance lingers in the background, but never gains traction. Brian left behind a life in motion, a medical career, a devoted girlfriend, plans for spring break, and family still reeling from his mother's death. Investigators found no signs of preparation, no hidden cash, no packed bags, no digital footprint suggesting a secret plan. His bank accounts and phone remained untouched. If he meant to vanish, he left nothing behind to suggest why or how. Foul play refuses to be dismissed. The bar's layout and the camera coverage make an undetected exit almost impossible without help or violence. Yet, no one reported a struggle, and no physical evidence, no blood, no belongings was ever recovered. Police never ruled out the possibility, but without witnesses or forensic proof, the theory sits in a shadow between suspicion and certainty. Some point to the construction area or a hidden exit, convinced that the building's unfinished state offered a route unseen by cameras. The service corridor and stairwell, partially covered by scaffolding, left a gap in observation. But police and engineers searched those spaces thoroughly. No evidence of a secret passage, no sign of forced entry or tampering. The gap in surveillance is real, but it does not offer answers, only more questions. Each theory bends to fit the evidence, but none can fully escape the void at the heart of the case. The Brian Shaffer case remains suspended in uncertainty. 2 decades after that night, the file is still open at the Columbus Division of Police. Official statements continue to reflect the same uneasy truth. Foul play has never been ruled out, but no one can say for sure what happened. Detectives have revisited the evidence again and again, applying new forensic techniques, re-examining the surveillance footage, and following up on every tip. Yet, the core of the mystery has never shifted. There is no confirmed footage of Brian leaving the ugly tuna saloona. No physical evidence has surfaced to suggest a struggle, a voluntary escape, or an accident. The building's blind spots remain as stubborn as ever, and the passage of time only deepens the void. Family and friends have watched the years pass without answers. Periodic public appeals and anniversary reviews bring the case back into the spotlight. But the outcome is always the same. One question, unyielding and raw. Police still urge anyone with information to come forward, but the trail is cold. The absence of a body, a witness, or a single definitive clue has left the case in a state of permanent limbo. For those left behind, the ache is sharpened by the evidence itself. Brian Shaffer entered the building on March 31st, 2006, and the record shows nothing after that. In every official archive, he never left the ugly tuna saloona, not in any way the evidence can prove. Tonight, Brian's case stands as a chilling reminder. Surveillance can watch every door, and still, someone can vanish without a trace. 18 years later, investigators, family, and onlookers still search for resolution. The absence of answers is its own kind of darkness, one that lingers in every unsolved frame. Some mysteries are not buried. They echo on, waiting for the silence to break. Share your thoughts below if this story haunted you.